What makes a great teacher truly great? It's often less about what they teach and way more about how they teach it. So what are the teaching styles that actually help students lean in, get engaged, and really succeed? Well, it turns out there's a science to it. And today, we're going to break down a model that maps it all out.
First up, we'll talk about a super common problem that pretty much every teacher runs into. Then, we'll get into the 2 key levers they can pull to actually fix it. That's going to reveal 4 totally distinct teaching styles. From there, we'll see how each one affects student motivation, so we can pinpoint the one approach that really works.
All right, let's dive right in. I think every teacher has been here. You design this activity that seems brilliant, super empowering for your students, and then crickets. It just falls completely flat. So why does that happen? Well, the research we're looking at today was kicked off by this exact question. In one situation, students were asked to create their own study guides, which in theory is a fantastic idea, but it just didn't work. Why? Well, the students said later they felt they lacked the judgment, authority, or knowledge to even do it. And that points to a much deeper issue. It's not about students being lazy, it's about the entire classroom environment. So to really understand that environment, we've got to look at 2 fundamental levers that every single teacher controls, whether they realize it or not. These 2 dimensions, they're the building blocks for this whole model. The first lever is structure. Now, this is basically the how-to of any assignment. It's all about how clear the instructions are, the guidance you get, the framework the teacher provides. Is there a clear path forward, or is it kind of a free-for-all? And the second lever, that's autonomy support. This one is all about freedom. How much space does a teacher give students to get creative, to follow their own curiosity, and to really take ownership of their work? Are they encouraged to go off and explore, or are they just told to follow a rigid set of directions? Okay, now this is where it gets really cool. When you put these 2 levers together, you've got structure on one axis and autonomy support on the other. You get this 2x2 grid, and that grid reveals 4 very different teaching styles. Let's map them out. And here it is, the student engagement praxis model. Each of these 4 squares represents a different mix of high or low structure and autonomy, and that creates 4 totally unique classroom dynamics: uninvolved, permissive, authoritarian, and the one we're building up to, authoritative. Let's break down what each one really feels like for a student. So, first up in the bottom left, we have the uninvolved approach. This is what happens when you have low structure and low autonomy support. The teacher gives very little guidance on what to do, and at the same time gives very little encouragement for students to explore their own ideas. And the result? Well, students feel completely lost and totally unsupported. They don't know how to do the task, and they don't feel empowered to figure it out on their own. This really pushes what we call extrinsic motivation. Basically, they're just doing the work to get a grade, not because they care about it at all. Okay, next up is the permissive approach. This one's high on autonomy support, but super low on structure. Here, the teacher's like a big cheerleader, telling students, go be creative, explore, but provides almost no framework on how to actually get started. This one's a bit of a mixed bag. It's trying to get that intrinsic motivation going, but remember that failed study guide project? This is probably what happened there. Students who are already really self-directed might do great here, but for a lot of others, they'll just feel lost because they're missing that crucial how-to. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the authoritarian approach. This is all about high structure and very low autonomy support. Think of it like a factory assembly line. The instructions are crystal clear, the steps are totally rigid, and there's zero room for any personal creativity. And this creates such a stark contrast, right? The permissive teacher basically says, go explore, but gives you no map. The authoritarian teacher gives you an incredibly detailed map, but forbids you from ever stepping off the path. One leads to confusion, the other completely stifles creativity. So, as you can see, these different styles have a direct line to a student's motivation, the reason they choose to do their work in the first place. And this why is absolutely the key to understanding what leads to success in the classroom. And just to be super clear here, intrinsic motivation is when you learn something for the pure joy of learning it. Extrinsic motivation is when you're doing something for a reward, like a good grade or to avoid getting a bad one. And while some styles lean on that extrinsic push, the real goal, the one for deep, lasting learning, is always to spark that intrinsic fire. And that brings us to our final quadrant. What happens when you combine the best of both worlds? What if you provide both the map and the freedom to explore? Well, that's where we find the most effective style of them all. Welcome to the authoritative approach. Here, the teacher provides high structure and high autonomy support. They give clear goals, a supportive framework to work within, but, and this is key, inside that framework, they actively encourage students to explore, to ask questions, and to make the project their own. And the results? They're so powerful. This approach nurtures that intrinsic motivation because students feel two things at once. They feel competent and they feel autonomous. They have the skills and the support they need to succeed, and they have the freedom to be creative. They're not just checking a box on an assignment. They are genuinely learning. So this brings us right here to the sweet spot. The authoritative approach isn't some middle-of-the-road compromise. It's a true synthesis. It recognizes that students need both things. They need freedom and they need guidance. The crucial idea is that it's about providing scaffolding to build something great, not a cage to keep them in. And really, when you boil it all down, it comes to this. This is the whole goal. When students are in an environment that supports both their competence and their autonomy, they don't just finish the work, they feel successful. And that feeling, that is what fuels a lifelong love of learning. So, I'll leave you with this. As you think back on your own life, maybe as a student, as a teacher, or even as a parent, which of these approaches resonates with you? Which style unlocked your curiosity and made you feel truly capable? It's a really powerful thing to think about.